You remember the silence after your last apology, not hers, yours. You bent softly, gently thinking it would bring her closer, but her pupils shrank. Her breath changed. She smiled. Yes. But something withdrew. You thought you had shown care, but she only saw hesitation, and hesitation is the scent of a dying king. There's a place behind her gaze she never lets you reach, not because she guards it, but because you're too equal to touch it. You offered respect. She wanted awe. You brought your truth. She craved your silence. There is no honor in the man who disarms himself in front of her. There is only pity, and pity does not breed longing. You feel it in her tone when she says it's fine, in the warmth that fades when you open up too soon, in the way she looks at another man, one who says less, stands taller, dares to command. You are not unloved. You are simply too accessible, and what is accessible is never crowned. You do not lose her because you are unkind. You lose her because you are too kind too soon. Before she kneels in reverence, you hand her the blade, and then you wonder why it finds your throat. You confuse virtue with surrender, authority with conversation, command with compromise. But no throne ever stayed full when its occupant begged to be understood. You offered fairness where she required fear, and her instincts, older than reason, recoiled. She did not want to see your soul. She wanted to see that your soul could crush others. She did not want to know that you loved her. She wanted to see that your love made you dangerous. You become harmless and therefore invisible. You speak with gentleness, but she watches your posture. You speak with honesty, but she listens for command. She hears your trembling voice as a confession not of love, but of instability. The more you prove you are safe, the more she senses you are unfit to lead. Equality, to you, is a gesture of closeness. To her, it is a decapitation. You cut off your own head, hand it to her, and call it intimacy. She takes it with a smile and places it beside the others. Another man who confused presence with permission. Another fool who thought that if he emptied the throne, she would climb on beside him. But she came to be ruled, not to be asked. You believe she will love you for understanding her, but no woman ever longed for the man who understood too much. Mystery starves. Explanation suffocates. You give her your thoughts, your fears, your doubts, but these are not gifts. These are burdens, and she did not come to carry them. She came to watch you carry the world. The moment you place your crown at her feet, she no longer sees a king. She sees a man hoping to be chosen, and nothing repels a woman faster than a man who wants to be chosen. The throne you think she'll share is not meant to be shared. It is a symbol, not a chair. It does not seat two. She does not want equality. She wants alignment, but alignment under you. She wants your stillness to tame her chaos, your power to contain her fire. But when you bow, you invert the ritual. Now she must become the structure. Now she must wear the armor. Now she must hold what you could not. And though she may smile through it, though she may nod as you call her queen, inside she mourns, because the man who crowns her out of fear is not a man she can follow. She tests you, not for cruelty, but for strength, not because she's manipulative, but because she's ancient. Her blood remembers empires, her womb remembers war. She throws chaos at you because the man who can stand through it is the one she can trust to lead her through the night. But you, who flinch at her fire, who apologize for your hunger, who hesitate when she demands a decision, you do not earn her defiance. You earn her disinterest. You become the neutral thing, the balanced thing, the equal thing, and equality, to her desire, is nothing more than dullness with good intentions. You mistake softness for nobility. But nobility is not soft. Nobility bleeds in silence. Nobility does not explain itself. It does not weep at the altar of fairness. It acts. It decides. It stands. The more you beg her to understand you, the more you confess that you do not understand her. She was not waiting for a man to show her he is safe. She was waiting for a man whose danger bends in service of something greater. She does not want to be safe. She wants to be consumed by a force that cannot be swayed. You lower your voice to please her. You hide your ambition so she won't think you're arrogant. You shrink your victories so she won't feel less than. But every time you diminish yourself in front of her, you hammer another nail into the coffin of her desire. She does not want less of you. She wants all of you raw, unfiltered, indifferent to her approval. It is that indifference that signals power. It is that distance that creates gravity. It is that silence that commands her chaos into devotion. When you become accessible, you become predictable. When you become predictable, you become forgettable. The men she remembers do not speak much. They walk like they own the wind. They do not explain their choices. They do not flinch when questioned. They do not pause when accused. They are not cruel. They are simply unmoved, and she follows, not because they are righteous, but because they are rooted. They do not seek permission to lead. They assume it with their gaze, with their silence, with their refusal to kneel. You call this arrogance. She calls it masculine. You thought your love would be enough. You thought being gentle would awaken her softness. You thought sharing your wounds would make her cherish you. But love does not awaken respect. Gentleness does not summon awe. And wounds, shared too soon, smell like spoiled fruit. She wants your heart, yes, but only after she knows it beats behind armor, only after she believes it cannot be bought. She must know that even if she left, you would not break, you would bleed, but you would not shatter, and that is what magnetizes her soul. She will test you again, she always will, not because she wants to break you, but because she needs to know you are not breakable. She will call your name in the middle of the night with rage in her voice, and she will look for how you stand. She will throw silence like daggers and watch your composure. If you chase, you lose. If you explain, you dissolve. If you remain still present, but firm, she may come closer. She may kneel again, but only if she senses the throne remains. You have made the mistake of assuming that affection and authority can coexist in balance. They cannot. One must serve the other. If you give her power, you must take responsibility. If you take power, you must offer vision. But if you offer neither only softness, only equality, only comfort, then you leave her in a void. And in that void, her instincts scream, not because you are unkind, but because you are unsafe, not in action, in essence. She may not say it, she may never admit it, but the part of her that craves you the most is the part that needs to be ruled, not with cruelty, not with control, but with presence, with unwavering presence, with authority that cannot be negotiated, even with love, especially with love. Because true love, the kind she aches for in the dark, is not democratic. It is not built on equality. It is built on a throne, and the throne cannot be empty. You are the man who gave it away. You are the man who begged her to sit beside him, not knowing she only ever loved the man who stood above. You were kind, you were honest, you were gentle, but you were not followed, because the throne smelled like fear, and her body knows the difference. You thought it was you she loved. You believed it was your stories, your softness, your soul she sought. But it was none of these. She followed you not because of who you were, but because of what your image allowed her to feel. Power disguised as posture, command hidden in restraint, the illusion of a hierarchy where she could surrender without shame. You mistook her gaze for affection, when it was fascination not with the man beneath the skin, but with the mask he wore better than the rest. You took the crown off your head and placed it in her hands, thinking she would hold it gently. But she did not come for gentleness. She came for gravity, and the moment your hands were empty, her eyes drifted elsewhere. She never stares at the man who tries hardest. She stares at the one who tries not at all. Not because he is careless, but because he knows that the performance of effort is the enemy of mystery. You who plead your intentions, who explain your truth, who seek fairness in every gesture, you rob her of the theater she craves. There is no legend in the man who reveals himself without being asked. No awe in the lover who disrobes without the thrill of resistance. She follows not the man, but the symbol, not the face, but the frame. You wonder why she listens to him, the one who barely speaks. It is because he dares to sit in silence while the world waits for his movement. His stillness constructs an empire. Yours explains itself to death. You envy the indifferent man, the one who walks through her storms without flinching. You call him cold, she calls him unshakable. You call him arrogant, she calls him necessary, because she, in her depths, does not desire to be your equal. She desires to be conquered by something larger than her doubt. And you, with your trembling voice, your apologies, your open heart, give her nothing to kneel before. She sees your kindness, and her gratitude withers. She sees your patience, and her hunger fades. She sees your transparency, and her mystery flees. Not because you are wrong, but because you are seen too clearly. When she looks at you, she calculates, not in numbers but in power. What does your tone signal? How do your eyes scan the room? Do others follow your movements? Do you hesitate when tested? She does not wait for you to explain. She watches, she listens to what you withhold, and in that silence, her desire sharpens. But when you give too much, when you perform vulnerability like theater, when you overshare your struggles before earning her trust, her calculation ends. There is nothing left to wonder, nothing left to chase. She cannot submit to a man she can predict. The men who command her soul do not beg for connection. They do not offer their wounds like currency. They walk with consequence. Every word a blade, every pause a strategy. Even their affection is earned, doled out in measured portions, never abundant enough to dull the edge. You offer love like water overflowing, constant, familiar, but she thirsts for wine rare, refined, withheld. The moment you tell her she is your everything, you become nothing more than her servant, and she, though flattered, begins to mourn, because she did not come to be praised. She came to be disciplined by desire. You ask what she wants. She does not answer, not because she is unsure, but because the question itself proves you do not understand. The man who must ask is already beneath her. The man who knows does not ask. He decides. He moves. And in his movement, she finds herself. Her devotion is not logical. It is hormonal, ancestral, mythic. You cannot negotiate your way into her longing. You must forge it in fire. And that fire is not in your words, it is in your will. When she tests you, she is not cruel. She is ceremonial. Every silence, every withdrawal, every contradiction is a ritual, a rite to see if the man before her will flinch. You, who flinch, who chase, who explain you fail the ceremony, not because you are bad, but because you are penetrable. She senses that your soul has no walls, that your throne can be stormed with the right tears, and that ruins the myth, because myth is what she loves. Not the man in flesh, but the myth of his control, the story his posture tells, the legend his restraint creates. She dreams of you in power, not in apology, in mystery, not in confession. You strip her fantasy bare when you hand her your heart too fast. There is no suspense in certainty, no seduction in transparency. You love her with too much light, and she retreats to shadows, not to hide, but to wait for the man who knows how to hunt in darkness. The men she craves are not necessarily cruel, but they are never weak. They may smile, but their eyes do not beg. They may kiss, but their hands do not shake. They may hold her, but their mind is elsewhere, plotting, building, conquering. She senses that she is part of his world, not the center, and in that peripheral place, her desire grows wild, because she is not designed to worship the man who worships her. She is designed to follow the man who knows how to remain untamed. When you center her, you vanish. When you orbit her, you lose gravity. She does not want you to become her mirror. She wants you to remain a monument, something she can lean against when her emotions storm, something that does not move when she screams, something that does not collapse when she threatens to leave. You, who shake at her disapproval, who explain yourself endlessly, who seek harmony too soon, you teach her to lead. And she, despite all her language, does not want to lead. She wants to collapse, but only into arms that never begged to be held. You think the world is changing, that equality is love, that fairness is strength. But beneath her skin, she still longs for the man who commands. Not with violence, not with words, but with presence, with consequence, with refusal. She will call you kind, call you sensitive, call you sweet. But she will not call you back, because the man she returns to is the one who never needed her return. And when she walks away, slow, unsure, testing, and you chase, you vanish from her blood, not because she hates you, but because she cannot respect you. She may miss your warmth, your voice, your love, but she will never return to a man who placed the crown in her lap and said, "Tell me what to do." The man she returns to is the one who didn't ask, the one who kept building, the one who never stopped sitting on the throne, even when she tried to topple it. It is not the man she loves, it is the crown he dares to wear. It is the silence he holds when she lashes out, the command in his breath when she grows hysterical, the indifference in his posture when she weaponizes affection. You, who treat her like a goddess, forget that even goddesses kneel before kings if the king is real, if the king does not kneel back. And so she watches you, from across the room, from across the bed, from across the years, not because she hopes you'll change, but because she waits to see if you'll ever remember who you were before you started asking for her approval. You believed freedom would win her heart, that unburdening yourself of authority, softening your voice, leveling your stance, these would make you worthy. But what you called liberation, she felt as collapse. You confused your need for acceptance with her need for admiration. You cut your own strings, thinking she'd see your vulnerability as courage. But a puppet who severs his strings does not become a man. He becomes a heap of wood at her feet. Still, you smiled. You told her, "I'm not like the others." And she nodded politely, even as the fire dimmed behind her eyes, because you mistook decency for magnetism, and she was already drifting toward the shadows cast by another man, one who said less, offered less, but stood as if the world itself would shift before he did. She never asked you to disarm. That was your decision. You laid your weapons at her feet before a single arrow had flown. You gave her the map to your soul before she even asked your name. You begged for connection before she could feel curiosity. In your eagerness to not hurt her, you made yourself harmless, and what is harmless becomes weightless. A presence that drifts, a voice that fades. You do not even offend, you simply cease to register. You confessed everything too soon, your thoughts, your fears, your dreams not as gifts, but as a plea for her to carry the burden of defining you. And no woman, no matter how tender, desires the man who makes her architect of his worth. You wear equality like a virtue, but she sees it as a betrayal, not of her, but of the law of tension, the sacred thread that pulls two souls together, not by sameness, but by polarity. You untie it every time you make yourself more relatable, more explainable, more pleasing. But she never loved the man who explained. She loved the man who withheld, the man whose silence invited projection, whose stillness stirred the myth in her blood. You thought control was domination, and so you refused it. But control is not cruelty. Control is direction. And when you gave her none, she had to create it herself. And though she can, she resents you for making her the structure she wished to surrender to. You feared being called controlling, so you relinquished command. You feared being seen as cold, so you made yourself warm, pliable, ever available. But control, to her, is not the enemy. It is the signal, the signpost that the man before her is not drifting, not lost, not begging to be completed, that he is whole, that he chooses, not reacts, and warmth, without tension, becomes smothering. You gave her a man without edges, without resistance, without danger, and in doing so, you made her the flame and the wood. She burned brightly, but alone, because the man before her would not strike the match. You think love means openness, that to let her in, you must tear down every wall. But she does not want to live in ruins. She wants to enter a fortress, slowly. Earn it, be denied, then invited, be questioned, then accepted. What you called honesty, she saw as desperation. What you called emotional depth, she experienced as lack of mystery, and desire dies in daylight. You flooded the room with your feelings, your insecurities, your past and the shadows, the silence, the hidden, all vanished. And so did her longing. She may stay, physically, she may hold your hand, kiss your cheek, smile at your jokes, but inside, she mourns. Because she cannot desire a man she pities. She cannot submit to a man who seeks her guidance. You think partnership is mutual shaping, but Machiavelli knew power is not shared. It is seized or lost, and she does not seek your obedience. She seeks your reign. If you listen closely, her complaints tell you everything. I need you to lead. Why can't you decide? Why do I have to hold everything? These are not accusations, they are laments, mourning the king who never claimed his crown. You let her name you safe, but she never needed safe. She needed strong, needed dangerous, but benevolent, fierce, but faithful. The man who could destroy, but never would. You showed her your scars, thinking they proved your depth, but she didn't come to nurse you. She came to be devoured by a man whose pain made him powerful, not passive. You think depth is display, but depth is restraint. Depth is what you do not reveal. The man who bleeds in front of everyone becomes background noise. The man who bleeds in silence becomes legend. You wait for her to choose you, to see your worth. But a king is not chosen. He is recognized. The man who waits is never crowned. The throne is not given. It is built by presence, by refusal, by solitude. She will not build it for you. She may help decorate it, but only after you've laid the stone. And you keep asking her what she needs. She needs you to stop asking. To become a man who acts without seeking applause, who walks without checking if she follows, who leads without trembling, That man, even if she resists, she will serve. You see other men, less kind, less attentive, yet adored, and you feel betrayed by reality. But it is not that they are cruel. It is that they are rooted. They stand firm in storms. They do not argue for their worth. They do not perform empathy. They contain. They decide. They hold the line. You call them stoic. She calls them necessary, because if she must burn, let it be against a wall that does not collapse, not against a man who softens into ash. You became the puppet not because she pulled your strings, but because you offered them. You wanted to please, to be agreeable, to cause no pain. But the man who fears causing pain will never inspire longing. Love is not the absence of harm. It is the presence of force, held in tension. She needed to know your limits, your edges, the laws of your kingdom. But you dissolved every law to keep her comfortable. And now she floats, unanchored, unheld. The truth you run from is this: she wants to surrender, but only to the man who will not surrender to her. She wants to be led, but only by the one who cannot be led by his need for her validation. She wants to fall into you not because you make space, but because you are the space, wide, solid, unmoved. The man who cuts his own strings hopes to prove he's not controlled, but all he proves is that he has no structure. And without structure, there is no desire, only a slow, polite death of interest. And so you sit now, wondering why she does not return your love, why she looks at you with tenderness, but not hunger, why she thanks you, but does not need you. It is because you offered her everything except the one thing she could never take: your power, your frame, your refusal. You gave her access to your soul, but no challenge. You gave her understanding, but no myth. You loved her, but you did not reign. And in the absence of reign, she returns to her world, to her mirrors, to her throne, alone. Not because she wanted to be alone, but because you made her the king, and she cannot love a man who abdicates. A throne stands in a silent room, dust gathering on its arms. No blood, no battle, no roar of defeat. Only the quiet shape of a man who once thought love meant stepping down. And a woman who still dreams of kneeling, but only before a man who never offered her the crown.